Thanks for tuning in to another edition of Another Dolphins podcast. And since this is the closest we are going to get to real live action football, we have to come back with another show this week. The Miami Dolphins have officially started their organized team activities that will go on through May and June ahead of training camp. And Joshua Houtz, the talk of the town, Tua Tagovailoa, has arrived.
Yeah, surprise, surprise, right? The biggest non-news of the day, right? I mean, we were talking about it before our podcast the other day, and we said, should we talk about it? And we were like, let's wait and see how this plays out. Let's see if he misses an actual, mandatory camp. So he showed up. I don't think anybody's surprised by that, but as we'll discuss, the two sides are definitely talking about a new contract, and fans shouldn't be surprised, by some of the reports, Tua declined a contract. Okay, Chris Greer probably lowballed him, right? That's the nature of the business. So let's give this thing time, but it's just funny how quickly, every single account on X, all the aggregators are sitting there. Oh no, Tua missed, all these camps and things like that. And that wasn't the case at all. So what were your thoughts, Jake? It's silly. It's absolutely silly.
Oh, the drama. Josh, can you believe it? Tua Tagovailoa was not with the team during rookie mini camps. And that isn't even entirely true. I think you can actually go back and spot different times over the last few months that Tua has been in the facility. And that's what makes this a little, just rolling your eyes. I really don't know any other way to describe it. But Josh, I think it was important for us to come on and talk about this because there is a path for this to become kind of an annoyance for the Dolphins, right? The conversations, everything we've heard from Tua's camp, from the Dolphins camp, from Drew Rosenhaus, who's like the PR firm for the entire NFL league. He does some great interviews with Josh Moser. If you haven't seen those, go watch those. But everyone seems to understand that this is going to get done before training camp. And I think the concern is in case it doesn't. That's like my one fear in case it doesn't. And not that Tua will not be the long-term quarterback for the Miami Dolphins. I just don't want this to distract the team from when they're actually supposed to be preparing for the football season. That is my biggest gripe. And Josh, you started hinting at things. There was a CBS report. Tua has been mostly absent from the team's optional training program. Mostly absent is the most fake way to kind of try to get clicks I've ever heard of in my life. Mostly absent. They are either absent or not. That's the definition of the word. And so you wonder, is this the Dolphins starting the negotiations leading to CBS Sports? Tua's been not here 24/7. It's a little lame, but okay. So then we get the other side of it, and that comes from ESPN. The worldwide leader in sports clapped that the former first-round pick rejected a contract from the Dolphins. Josh, saying those two things out loud, this is the most rated E for everyone contract negotiations I've ever heard in my life, and people are treating it like it's World War III, and it's Aaron Rodgers going on Pat McAfee to talk crap about the Jets, and then you have the Jets camp saying that Aaron Rodgers is too big of a distraction. This is a little bananas.
Yeah, it's a little bit bananas, but I mean, it's kind of just the whole story of Tua Tagovailoa, right? I mean, he's always been this kind of guy that's just this polarizing subject. So it is kind of funny the way it seems like it's spinning, and I don't want to say it's more negative towards Tua, but he rejected it. He's not showing up to camp. You might be right. The Dolphins may be leaking things out there. Playing a little bit of reindeer games. We know Chris Greer always has a price, right? He always has a price he wants to pay for a certain guy, and I think we can all agree. Tua Tagovailoa is in that rock and a hard place, right? He's at that point where we can all sit here and admit he's the best quarterback we had since Dan Marino, X, Y, and Z, but you still want to see him elevate it to the next level. And you're looking around the league and you see Jared Goff. I looked it up. He's making the second most average salary annually by a quarterback with $53 million. I mean, it's just the way the business is. I mean, so to sit here and say the Dolphins can't pay, they have to pay Tua, right? It's just the way it has to be, whether you're pro Tua, against Tua. We can all sit here and say, maybe he's going to get a little bit more than he deserves, but that's just the way things are going to go. So don't let everything that you hear in the media, don't let Twitter kind of make you, put you in a tizzy, right? We're sitting here and it's May. There's time for this deal to get done, and both sides want to get a deal done. So it'll get done. But like you said, Jake, what if it doesn't? And at that point, I mean, I couldn't even imagine if Tua is like, nah, I don't want what you're offering me. Let's talk about the end of the year, because that doesn't seem like who Tua is. And again, it seems like Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer realize that this is their quarterback to run the offense that they built for him.
And it's so silly to argue over 51 compared to $53 million. one, I can't wrap my head around a single $1 million, let alone 53 of them. But I mean, and I find myself, I'm always throwing shots at this person. I don't mean to, but the difference there is Ethan freaking Carter. Like, we are having World War III on Dolphins Twitter over the possibility of being able to retain Ethan Carter for his contract. Like, I think it's so important to keep everything here in perspective. And there, like, Tua has been one of the league's better quarterbacks when he's been on the field. Yes, there have been some horrible, horrible shortcomings in the later months. We have talked about it and we'll continue to talk about it. But man, like, when you have a quarterback who's good, you lock him up. And this is the time to do it. But you do it before camp because, not one, it is the greatest PR move in the world for an organization. You're telling me if Tua doesn't come in late July, and all of a sudden he has the headlines, Tua's a top 3 paid quarterback. If someone wants to make the headline, Tua's the number 1 paid quarterback in the league. The vibes in that locker room are going to be immaculate. Like, we last year started to see that Tua personality. I think he maybe leaned into being Drake a little bit too much at the time, but outside of that, it was fun to see him coming out of his shell. I don't want to see him turn into defensive Tua. And I already hear people yelling at the radios like, he's making $50 million to be a franchise quarterback. You know, F the feelings. Who cares? Like, this is supposed to be your guy. But, like, there's a method to all the madness. And I do think that deal is coming. Josh, I saw an interesting question on Twitter, and shout out goes to Adam Gase. He's the one who shared it. He can definitely really get the engagement going on Twitter with the way he asks questions, and I think he'll be the first one to tell you that. But Josh, your expectations now for Tua, and your expectations in about a month or so when he gets that contract extension, do your expectations of what Tua is going to be not only in 2024 but moving forward change at all when that signature goes across the dotted line?
Yeah, I mean, at first, I think I tweeted out that I almost did feel that way. Once he's making $52 million annually, well, then you need to see that bar raised. But then I thought about it, and it's not really the case, right? We've seen the Dolphins year after year now. We're seeing them, put together these winning seasons. We're seeing them make the playoffs, but we're seeing them stop right there. So I think my expectations are still, you got to go, compete. I put compete just because the Buffalo Bills are, the kings of the AFC East for now, but I want to see him knock down the Bills, take over the AFC East, and then I want to see him win at least a playoff game. I mean, I feel so sad that we've gotten to this point in our life where it's been 20 plus years since we've seen a playoff game where we're like, okay, man, we'll pay him $53 million and then hope that we can, win a playoff game. So my expectations, I think at this point with what we've seen from the Mike McDaniels teams offensively, we're seeing the different pieces defensively. I think it's at a sky high, and I'm tweeting it out because I am going to be disappointed. I'm probably going to be one of the most negative people on Dolphins Twitter X if this whole thing collapses. But let's hope we're not talking about that. So he definitely worded that thing great because I think deep down he knows that the expectations are high regardless. So what are your thoughts on that, Jake? Because it really is.
Man, dude, we have been on a safe wavelength lately, and I know that doesn't make for the greatest radio, but man, like, Tua's entering year 5. Your expectations for a 5th-year quarterback does not change no matter how much he's making. None of your expectations should change because we've been talking about this contract extension for 2 years now, and Tua's done nothing to completely sway us in the other direction. That's where I think it's an interesting question, but for me, I don't think you're looking at the big picture if the second he signs on that dotted line, your expectations change. But I will say, entering year 4 last year, entering this year, I wanted to see him be a superhero sometimes. It hasn't really been to his game where things are really dysfunctional and all of a sudden he just wills the team down the field. And I already know, Josh, I'm sorry. At Houtz is going to be littered with these drives like against the Baltimore Ravens and last year early against the Buffalo Bills where Tua was awesome and dynamic. But we're talking about those late season situations where I want to see him go out there and just be a flat out puppet master and no one else on the field is going to tell him otherwise. Those are lofty expectations. Those are very unfair expectations. Those are the things we have been talking about that we need to expect from him once he starts making this $50 million.
Yeah, and it's crazy. I mean, the guy just came off of what he led the league in passing with 4,624 yards. So, I mean, there really is nowhere else to go but to start winning some of those meaningful games, Jake. And it's, again, I think it's a little bit unfair that we're starting a season where it's like, okay, Dolphins, you got to go out there and you got to win 11 or 12 games or, this season's an absolute bust. But that's kind of the way it is. And I mean, that's going to be how it is every year after this contract signed or without this contract being signed. Because, again, you got the skill players, your window is at a certain point. I just think that at some, a lot of the discourse right now is over how much you need to pay to it. And Whether you like it or not, you just got to pay him, right? I have written down, I believe it was Goff had 4 years, $212 million, 170 guaranteed. So I believe Tua is going to probably make more than that, and it's just the way it is, right?
And players get contract extensions 12 months out of the year. And everyone becomes the highest paid player, but not forever. And I think having that headline where whether it's an Adam Schefter tweet, whether it's the Bleacher Report saying that Tua has become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, the key here is that that's going to change so quickly, and year by year, everything changes so much. It's weird to say, but that headline, I think, means so much for these guys. I think when Dak Prescott got his deal, I think a big part of it was he wants to be called the highest paid player in the NFL. Dude, there was a receiver a couple of years ago. Man, I wish I remembered it, but there was a receiver who got paid like $1 more than the guy who gets paid most in the NFL just to get the headline. And I think that stuff's so important. I think the Dolphins have done maybe a good, not great job of being all in on Tua. Just Greer's done a great job of saying, like, you're our guy. We love having Tua. He's reached his expectations. We expect him to keep growing. But I only say good, not great, because I still think back to a few years ago of the Brian Flores saga, trying to trade him every year. Like, there have been some rough spots where I think Tua could still possibly feel a little vulnerable at times, and that's okay. But I do think they're in a good spot. I do think this deal gets signed. Josh, any worries at all based on what we're hearing out of OTAs? I think this is probably the most newsworthy type of thing we're going to be talking about, at least this week.
Yeah, again, I don't think I'm too worried. Sorry, cats are jumping up here fighting. I don't think I'm worried. I think it's gonna get done. And then you mentioned how the next contract has to almost up the other guy. I have written down the top five, and this is just annual salary. Obviously, the deals are longer, more years, things like that. But Hurts got 51 million, Lamar got 52 million, Herbert 52 and a half, and then Goff 53 with Burrow at the top with 55 million. So, like you said, man, I think if you look at that chronologically, that's almost how those deals got done. So I'm seeing Tua somewhere around the 53, 0.5 million, whatever the guaranteed is. But you mentioned he's got to do what's best for him, and the team has to do what's best for them. And I think that's what it ultimately comes down to is no matter what the Dolphins do, they have to have I don't want to say an out, but they have to have a way that if this thing doesn't work, if there is a knock on wood, a catastrophic injury or something like that, that they can get out of this thing. And I think that's probably where things are hung up on, right? If you're Tua, you want to protect yourself at all costs. If you're the Dolphins, you want to protect yourself. I just hope they figure out a way to get this done before the season starts, like you mentioned. And Jake, you brought up Dak and Trevor Lawrence. I mean, they're kind of pressuring this thing too, right? Trevor Lawrence is setting up to get paid. Dak's going to get paid. If either of those guys get paid now, I mean, I just mentioned the chronological thing. Tua then might see even more money, whether you think he's better than Trevor Lawrence or not. It's just the way of the land. So hopefully this thing gets done soon. And I think that's all I got to say.
What do you think is some of the stuff they're arguing about? I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I remember reading about some of the the college coaches, college football coaches, some of the deals they signed, the millions of dollars they make. And I remember reading fine print, they got to do X amount of TikToks, like just have a social media person come in and they can't say like no to them. Basically, you got to be here to do this TikTok for like recruiting or whatever it may be. Do you think that's any of the stuff that the Dolphins and Tua are arguing about? Like how many social media posts, how many times Tua has to go up and like do something for Twitter? Because again, man, I go back to it. If you're talking what was it, Justin Herbert at like 53 million, Jalen Hurts at 51 million, I'm throwing shots again, and I'm sorry, but that is Keon Crossan, all right? Like this is not, I don't think, the debate. So I'm curious if you wonder if there's any type of like finer details that they could be trying to work out here.
No, it would be interesting though if they're like, you got to tweet out, X, Y, and Z. I mean, we see the muscle milk ads and things like that he's tweeting out. Like he really isn't a social media guy, but you'll see like these crazy awkward things. No, I mean the thing to me is maybe guaranteed money, right? And then possibly incentives, games played, wins. I mean, we say wins aren't a quarterback stat, but you look at 32 and 19, he can point at that and say, this team hasn't won games since, I'm the quarterback here that took us from that. I don't know. I don't know. And another thing, Jake, how much of this do you think is these teams finally having a quarterback? Like we talked about Goff, they finally have a quarterback, the Lions. How much of it do you think that they're just like, okay, we're tired of looking, like, let's just pay this dude, right? I mean, I don't think that that's necessarily the way that these teams view things, but when you're the Dolphins, when you went through 20 plus years of, absolute mediocrity and just sadness at that position outside of Tannehill, no disrespect to thumbs, maybe you're more inclined to make sure that you pay that guy what he's worth, but I don't know. I'm spinning out of control.
This might sound like a dumb thought, but I kind of feel like I'm not putting Tua in this category, but I feel like there's a floor where a quarterback can be more successful than it was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, where it did seem like that there were situations where, well, these quarterbacks can't figure it out. We got to move on. Where you have these awesome success stories like Jared Goff. I don't know if that's just with the offenses becoming more dynamic, making it a little easier for quarterbacks. And that's where I do think that some of these guys you can kind of want to have around a little longer. And I think the NFL had a real issue for a couple years and maybe still do, that they don't develop players, right? You have these guys coming in at 21 years old playing against 30-year-olds. And there was a time, and I think there still is, with how putrid offensive lines are in general. And it's just because you don't have studs like Butch Berry in every locker room that can really build up guys with their sticky notes and make them into stars. So I think it's partially that offenses are a little more flexible, where you can maybe lean into some guy and say your ceiling isn't necessarily what we thought it was, where like we're begging for you to get 24 points a game and not screw things up. I think there's a little more variance there. And I think quarterbacks, at the same time, I don't want to say that Tua is only doing this because offense is easier. He's leading the league in passing yards. Raheem Mostert, 18 rushing touchdowns last year. Go ahead and check how many of those were inside the 10-yard line after the Dolphins passed it all the way down the field. So the touchdown numbers haven't been there. The conversation's pretty unique, but I think they're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, Jake. And I think it is pretty cool. Just, from Jared Goff, he went from being what, just thrown into the Matthew Stafford trade. And now he's, for lack of a better word, the franchise quarterback of the Detroit Lions, and they're winning playoff games. I mean, kind of absurd to think. And it just goes back to, you never know what these players can become in the right system. So shout out to Jared Goff, shout out to Tua. Cause I mean, at one point, same with him, right? There were rumors that Dolphins were going to move on, go elsewhere. And who knew what was going to happen with Tua? And now he's leading the league in passing and things like that. It's absolutely absurd.
We are a football podcast, specifically an NFL podcast, but we do other things outside of talking about the Dolphins. You can find us both on the Finsider. You can find us both on this podcast, 560 WQAM, at Houtz on Twitter. But Josh, we do have a couple feathers that are differently colored here. So you write outside of the Finsider. I thought this would be a great opportunity to capture lightning in a bottle here and talk about a beloved gaming franchise that's making a return here. So NCAA football is coming back. We have it dropping next month, and you got to write a little bit about it for Operation Sports. What have you really, after sinking your teeth into this game, what have you really uncovered?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody, at least at one point in their life, had played the college football games, right? I mean, I personally would always play that game hardcore for a month and then, trade it in and go play Madden. I probably lost so much money in doing that, saying it out loud. What an idiot. But it's just an entirely different game. It's more wide open. You can see the different, the elements from the crowd noise and the mascots and things like that. So they finally released a trailer after nearly, I think it was 11 years. We finally got our first look at the new rebranded EA Sports College Football 25. And as long as they can get the gameplay in there, dynasty mode, and have the nil stuff and the recruiting and things like that, transfer portal, if they can do that flawlessly, which I'm still a little bit skeptical on, I think it's going to be everything that fans expect. So, dude, I'm absolutely stoked for this. I think you and I have talked about it. We're probably going to give away a copy of the game, but again, July 19th it comes out, and for fans that have been waiting over a decade for this, I mean, as of now, at least on the surface, based on one reveal trailer, some campus huddle notes, it looks like the game everyone's dreamed of. So have you any memories of college football video games, or did you kind of skip those?
See, I was big into Madden, and that was kind of my, lack of better words, hurdle. I couldn't drop $120 to get both. So I kind of just leaned into Madden. I played in some Madden tournaments. I went to Walmart. Sorry, cut me off if I already told this story, but big into Madden. The local Walmart used to, I don't know how or why, but they'd throw up some all TVs that they'd be using for displays. They'd throw up some canopies, and all of a sudden they just have a Madden tournament once every year. And one year I came in like 6th, and then the following year they announced that the winners, the final 4, is going to be played at the Beacon Theater, a big movie theater in the center of Pittsfield. Sounds dope. Awful idea, because you like Devon best because he hides in the defense. It's different when you're staring up, looking at this entire monitor, trying to figure out who's open, who's closed, different things like that. And basically my entire story ends with some salty pettiness, because made it to the finals with the Miami Dolphins. I don't know if I can say this, Josh, we can cut it out. I was smoking that Reggie Bush, and then In the finals, I had to play the guy who was the brother of who I beat in the semifinals. So my play action waggle, my halfback tosses, they just were not working the same. I ended up losing the championship, but that was probably my peak of Madden. I played a little bit for money at a certain point, but man, that must have been like 6, 7 years ago. NCAA was never my thing, but I love the hype because my favorite part about Madden was every year, whether I pre-ordered at Walmart, whether I pre-ordered at GameStop, I win at midnight. Why? I don't know, but it was so cool just to kind of rant with people. I remember someone got so mad at me when it was the year after the Patriots started the year 18-0. Someone got really mad at me because like, nah, the Atlanta Falcons, I think, has the most dynamic offense in the NFL with their playmakers. But that's about it for me. Sorry to take it kind of off subject there, but Josh, I wanted to ask you, what's your dynasty team? What's your school that you kind of like to flirt with there?
Yeah, well, that sounds amazing, Jake, playing in those tournaments. That's kind of the thing, right? I mean, I think that's what everyone likes about college football is they can take some, Montana or some random ass team and just try to build them and recruit. And, that is what makes NCAA college football, the video game so much fun. So I was gonna I'm from Pennsylvania, so I was thinking maybe Penn State because they have not won anything, but I think I'd like more of a challenge. So I was gonna give that some time, maybe throw out a Twitter poll or something like that. But yeah, I'm excited for Dynasty mode. But again, you just got to temper your expectations because anybody that's played Madden, you've probably been disappointed over the last few years. There is a chance that could translate to college football. So we'll see, man. We'll see. But yeah, I'm stoked. And like I said, we'll be giving away a copy at some point this off season, Jake.
Yeah, I'm basically, Josh, I'm letting you tease it without really giving much more details. So let's get into it. We mentioned it last show, but we have an email address. We've shoveled up all our pennies and nickels and we're able to purchase our very own email address. So if you would like to win a copy, regular edition, $150 for a video game that doesn't include night vision goggles, looking at you, Modern Warfare 2, is absolutely ridiculous. So what we're going to do is we're going to give away a copy of NCAA football, college football 25, however you want to call it. All you got to do, send us a question at AnotherDolphinsPodcast@gmail.com. Send us a question. You'll instantly be entered into a giveaway. And if you want 2 more entries into that giveaway, all we need you to do is leave a review of this podcast on iTunes and screenshot it and send it to us. And that way, right then and there, you'll have 3 entries into winning a copy of College Football 25. And I mean this in the nicest way possible. We're football maniacs. There are people already pre-ordering this. We're going to announce this drawing on July 7th. That way, when you guys are, out there waiting, like, oh, like, am I going to win a copy? Do I need to go buy a copy? You'll know far in advance. So that way you can still go get your pre-order rewards, different things like that. And we will try to do everything we can, hopefully get you a digital code so you can start playing that day. Otherwise, we will ship you a copy, PlayStation, Xbox. Josh, the most boomer thing I've ever asked in my life. Are these games on PC yet?
They're not, and people are upset because then you get into the whole modding, and then EA kind of looks like a jerk because then there's people like that can turn games into so much more than even the developers can. So I think there's a reason they cap it there. So not on PC yet. I'm sure that's going to be something they hype up, next year, the year after as a brand new feature, crossplay on PC. But sorry, not right now.
But Jake, you talk way too fast and way too high and whiny. I did not hear the email address. I put it in the description of every single show moving forward. AnotherDolphinsPodcast@gmail.com. Man, I might have to check out this game just for the itch. And to wrap up, can I give like one old man yelling at the clouds type direction these games are going in where I'm just not a fan of whatsoever?
It's got to be the Ultimate Team stuff, right? Is that what you're gonna say? Like, come on, man, stop with the Ultimate Team, stop with the microtransactions. They are doing a college Ultimate Team, so as long as the Road to Glory, things like that will be good. But once they start focusing just on those Ultimate Teams and things like that, as we saw with Madden, that's no bueno. So that's me yelling at the clouds. Damn you, Ultimate Team! Enough is enough.
Dude, I love the concept of Ultimate Teams. I'm a big nerd. I love collecting cards. I love card games. And this is that. This is your football trading cards. My gripe more is, why is everybody a 99 overall? I think we've reached the phase where the participation trophies have gone way too far into these football games. It just is a little ridiculous that you have so many players 99 overall, a team 99 overall. That should be near impossible to accomplish. I think that is the issue with all these games, is that you have these ultimate teams that are far too ultimate, far too talented, and it takes away any type of skill, any type of maybe matchup analysis that you'd want in a football game. And instead, everyone's just chasing for, I see the reels on YouTube, the reels on Facebook. These 3 plays are unguardable in Madden or NCAA. That's a garbage way to make a game, man. That is an awful way. If the way you win is to find the plays that are quote unquote broken, or you really don't need to play with things, that's my gripe. I think I remember reading something that Jaden McDaniels became an NCAA on NCAA 20, or excuse me, NBA 2K. He's an 88 overall. And then you have someone like LaMarcus Aldridge, who didn't become an 88 overall till like 12 years into his career. I just think they just try to hype up everyone so much and hype up everyone so quickly, where it just takes away such a fun dynamic of that game. And it's accepting that you have position groups that suck. We know that the Miami Dolphins offensive line sucks, and we build around it.
Yeah, we definitely build around it. It's funny you say that because you mentioned the same 3 plays, Jake, and that is what I think is also so frustrating. I talked about Ultimate Team, but if you go on and play Ultimate Team, if you're playing online, everyone, is just cheesing, just trying to do the same plays, whatever plays work, just trying to get that win. Sometimes the game even freezes up and you get that disconnect. So there's a lot of things I think I could sit here and, yelling at the clouds, but I'm intrigued by what college football is bringing back. And let's be honest, EA Sports has let us down before, but their reputation is legit like riding on this. Like they've gathered hype for the last 10 plus years. They cannot lay an egg, but then again, maybe they will. One last thing, and my favorite thing I think I saw over the weekend was Topher mentioned I used to send a memory card out to someone like Seattle to like put the roster on.
That's
so those days are long gone. They finally got the players in this one. So I don't know how many 99 overall, but we'll finally start to see some players in this one. And that's been a long time coming.
So whether you're a fan of NCAA, whether you're not and you want to give it a shot, want to win a copy, send us a question at AnotherDolphinsPodcast@gmail.com. Have it be football related. Don't care if you want to know if I like shampoo over conditioner. That's not why we're here. So you get 1 entry if you send us a question. You get 2 more if you send us a screenshot of you reviewing the show. But that is it, Josh. I hope everyone out there is having a beautiful Monday. It is absolutely lovely here in Massachusetts. Little midweek show for you guys as the Dolphins are going through OTAs. But thank you all so much for listening to Another Dolphins podcast. We will be back later this week with the return of Kat to go through some more news and notes as we get ready for the 2024 season. But until then, fins up.
Fins up.
What's up?